Hello, John Najarian here. If you want to trade like a rebel, if you want to party like a rebel, well, you got to come to Rebelcon 2022. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas, at the fabulous Four Seasons Resort. We start the 21st of September, go until September 24th. It will be more fun and more live trading than we've ever done before. That's why it's called Rebelcon 2022. We're going to have barbecues, we're going to have golf tournaments, and double the amount of live trading. So if you want to book that now, make sure you do, because the guest speakers, as soon as we announce those, this thing's going to be sold out. It's going to be something you do not want to miss. Limited to 250 people. Diamond, platinum, and gold packages are selling out. Sign up now for Rebelcon 2022 at the Four Seasons in Dallas, Texas.
Welcome to the Rebellion.
Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this, midday. We don't want to get midweek, rather. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But when we look back at yesterday, some movement, unbelievable movement. Yes. And it started off very, very negative. You look at the Dow and you look over at the NASDAQ, and the Dow actually, after that early morning plunge, it absolutely recovered and ran nearly 600 points to actually finish in positive territory. Meanwhile, the disconnect is also in effect, which is the NASDAQ itself. The NASDAQ was down early. It did rally as well, but stayed down significantly when you really take a look at where we closed, down 2.3% or so yesterday, 270 points. So there was that disconnect yesterday. Today, a little bit of a different story, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves too fast. So we've been hanging around with the volatility index near that 36 level. The VXN, the volatility of the NASDAQ, did get all the way up towards that 39 level, but finished up the day closer to 36, but still very, very elevated for all the right reasons, right? You get a push to the downside by about a little over 2%, at almost 2.5%, and you're going to see something like that. That's exactly what we're seeing, and we've been talking about the NASDAQ volatility has been much more telling and much more important of late in terms of the markets themselves. Volumes, now, that's an area where we were struggling on Monday. It looks like we struggled again yesterday. Yesterday, the volumes were only about 35 million contracts. That was something that was a little bit disappointing. You wonder why, but also let's remember where we are. We're sitting in May, we're getting towards June, and sometimes we do get that effect. And that was something we did not have for the last couple of years due to the pandemic. Now that we are further away from all of the at least the monstrous moves that everybody was having and the shifting of lifestyle and everything else, as we've normalized to some degree, we are seeing a little bit back like we always used to, which spring, summer, you start to get a little bit lighter volume. Maybe that's the case. We'll keep an eye on that. But May started out very, very strong. So just our last couple of days is all I'm just commenting about, seeing some of those volumes kind of pull back. Natural gas, we don't talk about it enough, but natural gas, don't take your eyes off this one. It is very close. Matter of fact, yesterday, near year-to-date highs, about $9, just underneath those levels. Then I look over at crude, 110, 111, kind of hanging in there, right? We've been talking about that for a while. Meanwhile, the 10-year just keeps on sort of sifting a little bit lower and a little bit lower, not at any kind of a fast pace, but certainly has been just kind of shifting back. It wasn't too long ago we were over 3. As a matter of fact, we were up towards 3.2, and here we are now about 276 or so yesterday. Communication sector, Snap, basically really the big dog here. And it's a small dog, but it definitely got the rest of them running down to the south side too. So all getting hammered yesterday. As a matter of fact, you look at that communication space as far as the sector, down nearly 4% yesterday. It was Snap that dragged down Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and Google, all getting pulled to the downside off of that. Consumer discretionary was getting a little bit of pressure as well yesterday. Look at names like Tesla, Amazon, Nike, Target, all in red. Then you look over at technology also. So you can understand why, based on what we're seeing there, why the NASDAQ got much more of an impact than we were seeing on the Dow. We look at tech, down 1.5%. The big boys were getting hit. It was Apple, it was Tesla, it was Netflix, PayPal, NVIDIA. I'm just throwing that one in there. Then Shopify, names like that, Snowflake, all yesterday struggling just a little bit. Then you get the staples. Staples were actually pretty good. You had Verizon, you had Pepsi, you had Coca-Cola, you had Procter & Gamble, all hanging in there pretty good, and a much quieter day in the energy space yesterday. We'll see how long that lasts. But today, we start off the day. We got the Fed minutes later on. That's going to be coming about 2 p.m. Eastern time. But the Dow was under pressure. So was the NASDAQ. We came in, everything was looking a little bit red. Matter of fact, triple digits to the downside for the Dow. Now we're triple digits to the upside for the Dow. That's how fast these things can flip. That's in the first hour of trade or so. Plus, then look at the NASDAQ. It was down about 70. Now it's up about 100 points or so. So we really are seeing a big flip. And today there's less of that dislocation where the NASDAQ just stayed where it was. And we were watching the Dow move to the upside, both moving to the upside in a big way. Nice to see that. We had volatility over 30 early, eased back a little bit, but not too terribly far from 30. And then I look over at the VXN. That's closer to 36, 37, but kind of holding a little bit closer probably towards 36. 10-year, like I said, just kind of drips off a little bit each and every day. It's sitting there right now at about a 272. Crude, we're at around 111. You look over at something like Bitcoin, still underneath 30,000, still struggling a little bit. We'll see if that's something that actually starts to show up a little bit more, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of move there. But the newsies part of the market stands here. When you look at Dick's and the report that they had, cutting their forecast, that stock absolutely getting hammered, along with many of the others that have had similar earnings calls. When you look back at Walmart and Target and others, obviously there's been, unfortunately, that trend of some of the struggles that people are dealing with here right now. Then you look over at Toll Brothers. Boy, everybody expected housing to be so bad, and actually Toll represented very, very nicely. The luxury home builder, they beat on the top and the bottom. So maybe not quite as bad, although obviously everybody's going to be impacted to some degree from the slowdown as you see the price of rates moving to the upside. So very early on, we had energy moving, consumer discretionary having a pretty good bounce back in strength. Technology started off only up about 0.25%, started to move to the upside as well. The only area that really was substantially into the red were staples, at least early on. So the names that really are propelling things to the upside right now, and what's really positive, talked about Toll. It's not just Toll. It's housing. Look at D.R. Horton. Look at Lennar having a pretty good start today, along with Pulte. I look at Twitter as well, having a pretty nice little pop. Best Buy, wow, they got a downgrade. They already had a sale on that one. If you watched halftime yesterday, that was a name that I've been watching. It's been on the list. We talk about part of the discipline is putting names on a list. And at some point, does it make sense? And my rationale yesterday was the news couldn't have been too much worse for Best Buy, and yet the stock was hanging in there. We've seen so many other names that have been crushed to the downside. Then they come in and they disappoint. They get hit even further. That didn't happen yesterday with Best Buy, and another downgrade today for Best Buy, and yet the stock is up significantly. So that was part of the rationale behind that. When you've got bad news and a good reaction, that's always kind of an interesting spot, and the stock getting very close to the lows, and the fact that fundamentally it's a very, very impressive company. So we'll see. It's not something that's going to be a forever trade, but something that at least early on is already starting to perform pretty nicely. I bought that one during the show yesterday. We also have Ross Stores with a nice bounce back, NVIDIA with a bounce back, those Chinese names with a little bit of strength with PDD, NetEase, throw in some of the other names as well. But it's not just there. We've got some great tech names, some bigger tech names moving to the upside as well, like a Salesforce having a pretty good start to today, at least. Chevron having a pretty decent start to the day as well. But what's really pulling a little bit on the markets would be something like Raymond James. We get to the financials. Financials generally have had a pretty decent run of late. But boy, Raymond James not looking too great early on. Then we've got Kroger, we've got Nike, we've got Costco. By the way, we got earnings coming out there as well. Take Two. I look at Estee Lauder under some pressure. Moderna, Albemarle, all these names a little bit to the downside, not getting absolutely hammered, although Raymond James getting hit up pretty good. But many of those names, they're in the red, but they're not getting absolutely slammed, not to the degree of what we have seen in the past. So got two unusuals, and then we're out of here. Carnival. Now, this one, I feel like this is almost piling on at this point with Carnival, because we've talked about this. We've been, fortunately, the unusual options have been very, very correct on the cruise ships. And we've seen every one of the names getting hit to the downside after seeing a lot of put buying as well. Well, this was kind of interesting at Carnival, because with the stock trading just below 12, 181,000 of the September 7.5 puts were being bought today for about 55 cents. That's a really monstrous trade. You can't take your eyes off of that, and I can't take my eyes off of that. But we've already had buyers of puts in the past expecting a move to the downside. We've been seeing that move to the downside. Everybody says we're coming out, and they've got all these great numbers. Something smells not so great about what's going on in the cruise ship area, and I just want to point that out because we've had unusual options, nothing to this size, and now we're seeing this monstrous size to these September 7.5 puts. Just something to keep in the back of your mind, if nothing else. Secondly, I've got Lucid. Now, we've had some electronic vehicle area where we've seen a lot of activity, a lot of call buying today on a big bounce. We're seeing that bounce play out in front of us, but Lucid stood out. Stock trading around 17. It's been hammered. It's not too far off of its lows. 5,500 of the June 3rd, so it gives you a little bit of time, about a week and a half. They're buying the 18 and a half calls. These are going for about 55 cents up to about 60 cents for those calls as well. So that's interesting because we're also seeing it, like I say, in other names within EV. Might be talking about some of those later on today. We'll see. But because of that, it looks pretty interesting. These Lucid calls, given where the stock is right now, also makes some sense as well. Don't forget this. We've got Rebelcon in Dallas. You're going to want to check this out. Just go to the Market Rebellion site, go through all the events, everything else. You'll find your way around. But Rebelcon in Dallas, really, really excited about that. It's going to be here faster than you think. So if you want to go, if you want to be a participant, you've got to start jumping on that pretty soon. Should be a lot of fun. Folks, have a great day of trading.